stakeholder collaboration to foster AI adoption in the global south, and it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce Mr. Hemant Pandey, who is the CEO of Center for Responsible AI at IIT Madras, and he's also going to be wearing the moderator's hat today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Srivatsan. It's a privilege to be here representing CIRAI as well as Vadhvani AI. This reminds me of an instance in Seattle when 15 minutes before the session I was told that I was going to be one of the panelists because somebody didn't show up. It's not that short a notice, but I am the host today. However, the Alpan, who was supposed to be the moderator today, has been called out of town. So I'm going to be the moderator as well today, okay? I hope that day it did go well. I hope with your support, today's session, I'm pretty sure it will go well. Let's collaborate on this one. So first, let me introduce our eminent panel, okay? So we have my friend, Professor Dame Wendy Hall. She tells me, or she tells everyone that even though Dame is a pretty coveted title, Professor comes first. Because that's the noble profession.
No, okay. That's not right. Dame title goes with your first name. So I'm Dame
so it's
Wendy.
Closely associated with the first name, right? So since, again, this is kind of last moment, I'm going to use a cheat sheet to introduce people, okay? So, Wendy, she is DB, FRS, yes, Regis Professor of Computer Science, Associate Vice President of International Engagements, and the Director of Web Science Institute at the University of Southampton. She became the Dame of British Empire in 2009 in the New Year's Honours List.
It's
And
Dame Commander.
Dame Commander.
It's actually Dame Commander, just in case you... There's a little bit of the British Empire that I command. And as we don't have the Empire anymore, I don't know it really exists, but I'm a Dame Commander.
But nevertheless, she does have a commanding presence. So, well, I know her from my and her ACM days as well. Association for Computing Machinery. She's the advisor to the UK government and also other governments as well as United Nations. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Aisha Walcott-Bryant. She's Senior Staff Research Scientist and head of Google Research Africa, with sites in Accra, that's Ghana, and Nairobi, Kenya. She has over a decade of experience working in Africa, and she leads teams to develop innovative technologies that leverage AI and computing to address Africa's most, Africa's challenges. And she drives Google Research Africa Food Security and Agricultural Research. And they are developing AI technology and tools that address food insecurity in Africa and also extending it globally. Okay. Welcome to the panel. Professor Vukosi Marifate. Vukosi is Professor of Computer Science and holds ABSA UP Chair of Data Science at the University of Pretoria. He specializes in developing machine learning, ML, and AI methods to extract insights from data with a particular focus on the intersection of AI, ML, and NLP, natural language processing. His research is dedicated to improving the methods, tools, and availability of data for local and low-resource languages. As the leader of Data Science for Social Impact Research Group in Computer Science Department, Vukosi is interested in using data science to solve social challenges, which is very relevant for our session. Thank you for being with us. Safia Hussain, she is the Chief Impact Officer and co-founder of Karya. She grew up in Central Asia and has a background of humanitarian work and research. Before Karya, she co-founded 2 companies in India and worked as a research consultant for 3IE and United Nations, later at STIR Education. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And she led the monitoring and evaluation with design of some big impact research projects. Thank you very much for being here. Dr. Makaran Tapaswi is the principal ML scientist at Wadhwani AI, which is our partner for this, this panel discussion. And focuses on using AI for social good. He's also an assistant professor at CVIT, at the Computer Vision Group at IIIT Hyderabad. And at Wadhwani AI, he's developing and deploying AI solutions that create social impact in education, health, and agriculture. Welcome to the panel. And finally, Dr. Niyati Chhaya. She currently leads AI and co-founder at Hyperbots Inc. She spent a decade at Adobe Research before starting up Hyperbots as a part of their research team focused on NLP and multi-model content understanding. In addition to her industry career, she has been teaching at IIIT Hyderabad and ISB as adjunct faculty and holds several patents and publications to her credit. So as you can see, we have a very eminent panel. And before I also give the context, I'll show you why I'm saying that this is eminent and also a relevant panel for our panel discussion today on multi-stakeholder collaboration. Because as you can see from the description, we have, if not representative, but advisor to multiple governments, so working with governments, people from industry. There is one person who's with industry as well as academia, so wearing double hats, people from academia and also non-profit organizations. So we do have a very good sample here. And also another thing is that they are obviously consumers, not only creators, but consumers of product of AI right now. Okay, AI itself has become a product now. So some of them are parents, I mean various roles. A person is student all the time. So anyway, so what I wanted to bring out is that opportunity, the potential of collaborating right there in our panel itself. Okay, again, welcome to this panel. They also represent potential for collaboration across geographies, because as we said, Africa, South Africa, UK, India. Okay, so that again represents a lot of global South, except
Perhaps
UK.
we've moved, you know, perhaps England's moved. We've moved away from Europe and attacked.
Yeah, Ravi.
Wendy is used to being the diversity person from the gender perspective, now you're diversity from geography as well.
Okay. Okay. So,
I can't see you, Ravi.
so yesterday, in one of yesterday's panels, people, that was in the context of education. So people talked about how everybody has a responsibility when it comes to AI. That may not be accountability or liability. Liability may lie with somebody, with the institution or rather the entity which institutionalizes it. But the responsibility of moral accountability lies with everybody. Okay. Now, with that, again, from the beginning, there is need for collaboration. There is need for multiple stakeholders coming together so that from the design, development up to deployment, we have collaboration which is inherent to it. Okay, so anyway, with this context, I'm going to launch into our panel, and I'm going to ask a common question, okay? I'm going to throw a common question to all of you, and we'll go in the round robin fashion. Okay? And that question is going to be, please tell us in 2 to 3 minutes each. By the way, the timer hasn't started here. So is it because this is the last session? So can the timer be started?
Lean into it. Come on.
Yeah. So time stands still, really, for this panel. Okay. So the question that I'm going to have, and each one answers in their own way, in short, is that can you briefly summarize your work for our audience today, especially highlighting how disparate stakeholders play an integral part in developing AI solutions responsibly, and what are the challenges inherent to it? So we'll start with Wendy.
Okay, thank you, Hemant. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hi. So I think I could talk about a lot of things, but I think I should talk about the work of the UN Advisory Board, because it was a huge... my background is I'm a computer scientist, most well known for the web and the internet work I've done, and I've always used AI though throughout, but I was catapulted into AI policy by Theresa May when she was Prime Minister, and I co-wrote an AI review for the UK. So it sort of developed our national strategy for AI back in 2017. This was before the ChatGPT moment, and but we all knew it was coming. That the generative AI machine learning was coming, but we didn't know how it was going to arrive. And then just after, there was ChatGPT moment, November 22, and that led to effectively the first one of these summits at Bletchley Park, which I was much, much smaller than this, and I was privileged to attend that. And we launched the AI Safety Institute there, but also just at that time, it was October 23, the UN announced their high-level advisory board, the AI Advisory Board, and I was hugely privileged to be on that. There were 40 of us from around the world. I mean, you can't represent the whole world with 40 people, but it was very multidisciplinary, mixed gender diverse, but it was also very, I would say maybe half of the people there were from the Global South. I can't remember exactly, but it was very geographically diverse. We had people from China as well, which is so important. I know it's, I mean, if this conference was in China, there'd be a lot of Chinese people there, obviously, but it is Chinese New Year, and I don't think there are that many of the Chinese people here. But to me, it's so important, if we're going to talk about global governance of AI and how we get people to adopt AI, we have to have China in the conversation as much as we have to have, clearly, the US and everywhere else in the world, but the US and China. China's got to be at the table. So the UN board had 2 Chinese people on it, and it was very, very well set up in that sense. We produced our report called Governing AI for Humanity in September 24, and that was at the UN General Assembly. And in that, we focused a lot on AI for everybody. I love the phrase, by the way, we keep seeing around in India, AI stands for all-inclusive. Is that what it is? Have you seen the phrase, all-inclusive? So the report was very much about, and you're seeing the implementation of that report now, it was very much about how we get global governance of AI in a way that is all-inclusive for the whole world and not just the rich West or the rich South of China. And just a week ago, they announced one of our first recommendations was for a global scientific board, and Ravi is on it. I don't know if there's anyone else here. Are you on it? But so, guys, you've got to do great service on this, okay? There's a lot riding on it, a lot of responsibility. It's hard work, by the way, and but you know, it's fun. There's a lot riding on this panel, and then there's supposed to be another one of our recommendations was a global dialogue about AI, and I think we meant that to be policymakers. I believe that will be launched, if it goes well, at the AI for Good conference in July. I'm going to more or less finish there because I can we can talk more about it if you want to, but to me, the UN, although potentially these days a flawed organisation, an organisation that doesn't have a lot of money, it is the only game in town when we're talking about global and inclusive of the global south and China, talking about how we make AI safe, how we make it good for humanity. Right. And so I would urge you all to follow what's going on there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the background. Aisha?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out today for this great panel in the evening, just before dinner. I'm Aisha, so I lead our Google Research Africa team. The work that we primarily do is pioneering AI for Africa, from Africa to the world. A lot of our solutions that we develop are by African scientists and researchers or collaborators across Google Research broadly that are wanting to impact the continent. But what we've seen is much of this work has scaled. So we cover domains in climate, sustainability, health, education, and others. Much of what we do is this stakeholder partnership. I always say, for me personally, I'm thinking about my community, children, and what's the future of AI given our demographic dividend both in Africa and in India. So we're building that future, and I think a lot of this spirit comes out in our research team. Some of the core interesting aspects of the work that we do is it's kind of research innovation to product innovation to impact. And we're very, very rigorous and serious around measuring impact. It's a lot if you are a scientist. You like to play on this side, do something really creative, but if we're not able to get a path to impact, this is not the right project for us. So picking that right project is very important around scale, not just for the continent, but for the world. I'll give two examples of this multi-stakeholder collaboration and how we work. One in weather and the other in African languages, which we just launched. So our weather work, our teams work with the local Met agencies across the continent. And for many of you all, you may know that in North America and Europe, there's about 300 radar stations for weather. And in Africa, there's an order of magnitude less, about 37. And you know, we can fit North America, Europe, and many other places inside of Africa. So you can imagine the dearth of data that we have in that space. So our team was able to work and to create an innovation that leveraged satellite data and a global model that enabled us to launch a global weather nowcasting that if you land in Africa, you'll now find on search, and you'll get precipitation estimations for 5-kilometer radius. So this is where your unique context, just like in India, this is not a challenge or a barrier. This is a breakthrough or innovation. This is something that you guys can bring to the world. The second example I'll do is working with collaborators more on the data collection side. So if you think about it, languages across India, across Africa, thousands. And the way to reach AI doesn't always have to be from a keyboard, and it can't. We have literacy barriers, we have various barriers to entry. And so what is an inclusive approach? Speech. So we created a data set, well actually through partnerships, with Makerere University in Uganda, with Digital Umuganda, and a number of other partners where it's partnership-led. They collect the language, speech, and language data in order to make it open and available to the communities. They own the data as well. What we've done is launch it as open source, 11,000 hours of ASR, that's automated speech recognition, and text-to-speech on Hugging Face for you developers. And it's called Wahal NLP. Wahal is Wolof in Senegal for speak. So this is one way that it's completely partnership-driven and led, and we're using technology as a layer to amplify and reach the ecosystem and the community, especially for languages. So those are some examples of the work in collaboration.
Thank you. We'll pick up on some of the points that you said later in the question and answer. Lucas.
Yeah, okay. Nice to be here, and good evening. I wear a number of hats, but for today I'll highlight two. So on one being at the university, my big interest is on African languages and how we deal with that being represented in a lot of machine learning or natural language processing. But I think I wanted to highlight, give as a way for people to appreciate this. Is on one side you might ask and say, like, where's the data for all these languages? Africa has 2,000, 3,000 languages, and many of them, we would take them as being low resource. It doesn't mean they don't have many speakers. They do, but there might not be just this digital presence that then makes it easier for developers or other people to be able to use. If you only look at that as a technical problem, you are going to very quickly kind of run out of railway track. So you then have to look at kind of the socio-technical, and this is where now thinking about the community, the partnerships, as Aisha has actually said, and even how people actually see languages becomes very important. So one of the challenges that you have in normally small languages, or like maybe the political nature of working with language, is then what happens in terms of what the community, people are expecting on the use of a language in society. If they're not expecting it to be used in math or physics or astronomy, it limits then some of its kind of wider applicability when you think about where you're going to now build up systems. So you now have to think, who's the user at the end of the day? What is it that they're expecting, and those things. So a lot of our research at the university is trying to figure this out. So I had to break out just not being in just the computer science department, but working with African languages, working with law on how then you can think about equitable licensing as a way to give power to kind of communities. On the other side, it's been great also sitting next to Karya here. I'm one of the co-founders of Lilapa AI, an AI startup company that works on now building these kind of language technologies, but then at the end being available to businesses to enable that they can reach their stakeholders in a much better way. So there are a lot even there in working and saying how you're going to improve those systems. You have to then think about partnerships and these multi-stakeholder kind of relationships, and that's where I will then hand it over to
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello? Okay, thank you so much. So, I mean, I think maybe some of the work that Karya does has been introduced, but just to give a brief overview, we're an impact-focused AI and digital services company, and we work all the way from the data set, like data set collection, to annotation, all the way to evaluations. And I think I'm actually quite lucky to be flanked by two of the stakeholders that we do work with, both Lilapa and Wadhwani AI. So I think for us, because we actually sit at a very interesting place. We sit almost as an intermediary between this extremely vast workforce of data collectors that I think Aisha mentioned, as well as on the other side, model builders and big tech companies. And a lot of the work that we have to do is creating a little bit of translation between these two. On the one end, because we work with a lot of low-income communities, we have to create value for the types of data that they can create, and we have to connect directly to ecosystem and model players to say, hey, you actually need to involve these people. So I think for us, and I think when I talk about collaboration, I'm going to speak a little bit at the worker level, because I think we to increase not only the representation, but also I think the knowledge that people have about this industry and what individual humans, so even everyone in this room, you have some sort of value that you can bring to AI. But I think the question for us is, as we're working together, how do you actually make sure that you engage in that responsibly across the entire value chain? And I think the only way that we can actually crack a value chain that becomes ethical, that becomes something that we all want to participate in, is through some sort of multi-stakeholder collaboration. Because we do have a situation where, and thankfully we do have, Wadhwani, we have Lilapa, they are building more in the south, but right now we do have this unequal divide of so much on the model side coming from the global north and so much from the building side and from the data side coming from the global majority. Can we either flip that or just create a little bit of a more equitable playing field for all of us? So I think for us, the key challenge really is power dynamics. How can we change that? And how can we use systems like this, right, where we're actually able to come together to create more equity and, I think, a little bit of representation and inclusion at every level.
Thank you. You talked about equity, representation, which is very fortuitous because the question that I'm going to ask of you later has to...
Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. And it's lovely to kind of hear from everyone before about the importance of multi-stakeholder collaboration. I think, so I'm an ML scientist. I like to build models. There's a lot of joy in seeing models first fail and then eventually start working. I think one of the things that I learned by joining Wadhwani AI, which was briefly introduced before, was if you really want to deploy solutions for the benefit of humanity, it cannot happen with ML scientists just sitting in one place and trying to do their thing, right? So that's just does not work. So Wadhwani AI, we are a non-profit organization, Applied AI Institute, that we build, develop and deploy solutions in education, health and agriculture. I've been working there for over a little five years, and it's been a phenomenal journey where you get to see your models actually now go out in the world and get used by people, and then they'll give you interesting feedback in terms of not necessarily model performance, because performance is not the only thing that matters, which is what you would typically expect for a machine learning scientist, but also usability, whether it's integrated well into the program itself, whether as language barriers are addressed, is it a voice interface or does it require some form of literacy? And all of these kind of factors come into play while making sure that a product actually gets used. So I'll stop there and you can take this next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Let me bring in a very complimentary view. So I lead a finance AI startup. Everything I put out there needs to work. It needs to make my stakeholder, who is a CFO, a very conservative persona, actually use AI. So if I look at someone who is not only trying to measure impact every day, ensure that the AI is responsible, also ensure that it is working for all my customers, and then finally ensure that they're going to trust it and actually pay me money. Right? So here my stakeholders are not only your model builders or the data that is creating all of this, but it is very much this whole trust building mechanism that obviously the marketing and the sales needs to bring in, but the AI builders need to actually establish. So part of my stakeholders are these AI agents, which will ensure that the customer data is safe. The second thing is I actually need data, or every startup or everyone who is in a sensitive B2B kind of vertical space needs data to actually build the AI that works, right? I can't always go out to closed source models. And definitely don't have the money to build large pre-trained models. So how do I make sure that I am able to convince my customer, give me good data, kind of gift wrap it and anonymize it or make it ethical to use for training, and then further train it and actually think of it in terms of monetization. I want to all the way take it to the infra folks and ensure that, hey, give me something secure that an extremely conservative persona is going to use. So everything that everyone on this panel has been talking about, impact, collaboration, data, model training, all of that is something where you are at a very small organization level, is something that you kind of need to do every day. And this has direct impact in terms of whether as an organization I will survive tomorrow or not. The last thing I would like to comment on in this context is that what is important is how do we ensure that organizations like startups collaborate with other governance organizations and have a say in building those policies, right? Because be it healthcare or fintech or education or any other, or defense for that matter, all of us are talking about AI in these fields. Having a space on the table where all the big players are actually bringing in the policy, ensuring that it is amenable to those small organizations who are trying to take this to their end customer is a kind of collaboration that I think we must nurture.
Thank you, Niyati. Well, I said round robin, but if I go by round robin fashion, then again you will be the last. And right now you have the microphone, so why don't I do this in the reverse order now? Okay. So you talked about AI, responsible AI in finance. The finance industry was one of the very early adopters, so in the 90s and things like that. But all the models, ML models, they were developed by the finance industry itself. So you alluded to some of those things, but perhaps let's drill down. What has changed now in the finance industry? How exactly are they collaborating? How we are assimilating with examples of collaboration? That's what I would like to drill down on.
Sure. So I think you nailed it. Math, finance, stats have existed. They have built their quant models and they still exist. What is new is with NLP getting useful or usable, what has happened is that the unstructured or the financial operations side, so transactional data in finance has become amenable to models using it, models generating it, models interpreting it. And that is the same data like those bills and the invoices and the simple transactional heavy manual tasks that while 90s automated planning and budgeting to some extent or quant modeling, no one touched these very dirty, shabby scans which have no regulation and they're all over the place. So that's one kind of large open space where there are even today like hundreds of people manually doing that data entry. And that is the space where your office of the CFO is starting to open up and say that, hey, can I, instead of having 200 people process 10,000 invoices for me monthly, can I have an AI agent do that for me so that if tomorrow I have 20,000 invoices, can we handle it with the same workforce? Obviously, there is cost optimization as well. One other aspect still remains is that this transactional or semi-structured finance data is still very mathematical in nature or semi-structured in nature. So it's not only the OCR and LLM on top of it, it is still very much going into those terms that accountants understand or chartered accountants understand or CPA understands to further drill down and say, how can I save cost? And that is where a lot of multi-stakeholder understanding or even on the science side, bringing in math reasoning or bringing in a non-agentic AI kind of very traditional stochastic model is important. So it's very interesting that while agents are taking over, it seems OCR is solved, but even then your best OCR in the world will not get any invoice right or always. So there are these nuances that where you go deeper and deeper within a domain, you learn that unless I start thinking like an accountant, I won't be able to build AI for them. So the stakeholder here becomes these non-tech professionals who are my actually customers.
So thank you for bringing out the importance of non-tech and non-finance stakeholders into the collaboration fold. Makaran, you've been, again, involved in working in healthcare, in education, in agriculture, and things like that. But the proliferation of AI has generally depended on internet bandwidth and prevalence of internet. In some of these domains, internet may not be that, fast, let's say agriculture, the consumers and things like that. So what's your view on how we circumvent that challenge?
Yeah, I think it's an important question. Much of the progress we've made since the last 5 years, I believe, is primarily because the data has been out there for everyone to scrape and build large models on. If that data doesn't exist online, I think we spoke about this with the 1,000 African languages. If that data is not on the internet, you will have to go and collect that data to build something for that society, right? So there's, from both the building perspective, which is where do you source the data from if it doesn't exist, and then from the deployment perspective, where the end user may not have access to a stable or a fast enough internet to perhaps kind of have your models run and interface with the tool. So I think both of these problems are important to address. I think the first one, there's a question of, do we need to build necessarily very large models for every language out there? Maybe not, right? Could we use multilingual LLMs essentially and then fine tune them with some, with hopefully lesser data, which is sourced purposefully for that community, which we can then use to get that LLM or other models to benefit that community, right? So I think that is one way of perhaps looking at it. Essentially, if you're trying to build for a particular community, probably helps to get data from that source. The second aspect is, I think my team from the whole anthropometry project is sitting here. So I started out with this project on newborn anthropometry at Vadhvani AI, which the goal is, can we take a video of a baby and then try and estimate what the weight is? Now you would think weight from vision images, that seems a little unrealistic. Turns out you can do it, or you can try and estimate it at least. And you can talk with all of my multiple stakeholders, right, who are collaborating, of course, to get that data sourced to us. The way this works is, it's not necessarily a large model that needs to kind of run on the internet or on some cloud server. We're able to compress these models, put them in the low-cost smartphones, not even iPhones or like high-end phones, just phones of 8,000 to 10,000 rupees, and have those models run offline. Right? So that serves the other purpose of, even if you're disconnected from the internet, you're able to make use of AI models that have been developed, which can then provide outputs real time and then assist in the process that would the frontline worker would otherwise do. And this can naturally extend to other domains like agriculture and education as well.
Thank you for a roadmap of addressing the challenge of what I posed to you. Okay. Safia, across the world, the data set building that you're talking about has been done by people from the global south. But the data has generally been coming from across the world, especially from global north. You talked about the need for representation, equity. How can this fact that the people who are collecting the data, they are working from global south, how can we bring in their inputs, how we can enable them?
Excellent question. Thank you so much, Hemant. So, I mean, I think as you very much called out, there are 4 countries that are kind of powerhouses of doing this type of data work. It is India, Kenya, Uganda, and the Philippines. And the reason why these countries have been the powerhouses is because English, right? These are all countries that are able to speak English. They're able to decipher the types of data that the global north needs to have deciphered. And unfortunately, there are mechanisms to unfairly pay people. And that is something that is something that is wanted sometimes in the AI value chain, because there are a lot of I guess, models that are chasing profit. But what I think we've really seen in the past few years that I find to be very exciting is that I think the divide is closing, and I think it's specifically because of language. I think we are realizing that if you want to have AI work in the global majority, you cannot take an English view to it. You not only have to take a linguistically appropriate view, but you also have to take a culturally and contextually relevant piece of view, right? So I think, when I see the world and what we're doing, when I see this type of work in the world, there's definitely a shift into English being more of an area where expertise is needed, right? I think that will always be something that the Global South will probably contribute to, right? Doctor annotations, lawyer annotations, etc. But I think what we've really seen, and I will speak especially, I think, for India, is a real growth in a desire to build foundational models, a desire to create inclusion through speech. And I think this is something we're seeing not only from the government, which, I think this year there has been an unprecedented amount of budget allocations specifically for local language data collection, which is something that's extremely exciting. There's also been budget allocation for stress testing and evaluations, which I think is something that is very new, because we are realizing that if we don't make sure that models actually fit the realities of the people that are going to use them, then there's actually no point in deploying that model. You actually won't see very high pickup, very high retention. There actually won't be safety and trust, right? So I think what's going to change, and I really do see this growing, and I think, Lilapa is a really great example of that, is that we are actually seeing so much demand growing for what does, in some ways, I'll use this term very loosely, but what does sovereign AI mean for each of these countries? How do we create true products that actually help people? So I think evaluations are going to be something that are very critical, and I think building the proper data sets. But in both of these things, what is very important, I think, for all of us to remember, and that's why we need to have good collaboration and safeguards, is that we don't become extractive. Because what I wouldn't want to happen is, in this big, desire to collect so much data, it shouldn't be that the people who are contributing to this either A, don't get to benefit from the technologies, or B, don't have some way to see that data as their own asset. And so I actually would like and encourage all of us, as we're thinking about collaboration, let's also think about ownership and how we can redefine that within the Global South, because I think we have the ability, and we're so many countries, we have so much power together. Can we change that narrative to say, what is data ownership, what is model ownership, and who actually gets to be in the room to decide how and what we build?
Thank you. With that thought, I would like to ask you, Fukusi. You talked, of course, about specific challenges of Africa, specific problems and things like that. So, as a leader in developing AI for Africans, what lessons have you gathered, and how do we address the lesson, expand those things to address the problems of overall Global South?
Yeah, that's a very tall order. In this case, I tend to see myself as a servant as opposed to a leader in that area, in terms of just trying to understand, also as a researcher. I think, on one has been, after spending a number of years building models, collecting data, was we spent the last year or so now working on analyzing what were some of the practices that were being done across like natural language processing and African language community, specifically through Masakani. Masakani is a kind of distributed research network for African languages. And on one part, not surprisingly, one of the things that came out was if we are being extractive, you limit your long-term impact, because it closes doors, it breaks trust. people don't want to interact. Whether, sure, there might be the data side, but the part I'm also very interested in, especially this year, I'm on my sabbatical year, just working on some research on thinking about evaluation. What are these kind of practices that we're doing in evaluation, and how do they really connect to what's happening kind of on the ground? So that's one of that. The extractive is like, being extractive and just thinking of let's go fast, it does have an impact. And I know it's visceral, right? If you're a researcher, it's like this thing where you're now questioning the decisions that you're making. I think it's worthwhile to make those questions and feel a little bit out of it in that way. The other one, just to finish, was a leap that people kind of took on saying, how do we get to creating tools that are, again, not computational, to assist either communities or people in keeping some way of control or like, of choosing whether their data, their models are going to be used. So yes, equitable licensing conversations have to happen. They are not going to be one size fits all. They're going to be very different for different communities, but we can't block them just because we're saying we're just rushing towards there has to be an LLM in every language. That doesn't necessarily need to be true. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be anything. And some communities won't want that at all. How do we get that to be part of our practice?
Thank you for giving a researcher's view for the solutions to be really applicable for the community. And talking about community, you also mentioned community in your opening remark. There seems to be a fundamental conflict in marrying cutting-edge, large-scale technology to highly localized problems in Africa. Okay. So do you see this as a conflict, or you have a more positive view, optimistic view of that?
I've been known to be very optimistic.
Let's hear the optimistic.
And I appreciate my own energy. It fuels me. So I definitely don't see this as a conflict. I think complementary to what many folks discussed on stage, I'll give an example to kind of highlight that. So, with my Google hat on, we have models like Gemma, which is an open weight model. We have MedGemma, which is actually more positive, like more downloads than Gemma itself, which is trained on medical text and imagery. And then we were looking at the challenge from a healthcare perspective of how do we make that medical reality relevant to the continent of Africa. Our burdens of disease are not equally distributed around the world. And so this is actually at the hallmark of this, this collaboration. We made this data set called AfriMed QA. It is a Pan-African Q&A data set from medical institutions, more than 16 countries across Africa, I think it's 32 different disciplines. But most importantly, it's 25,000 question and answers from the African context, from those who are medically trained. And so what's key about that is as you use these types of models, you're now being able to, okay, first you might benchmark with this type of data set, but also, evaluate how these large language models are representing your context. Further down the line, it could be fine-tuning or leveraging some of the open models with this data set. So that allows us to bring in our reality and our context into the technologies that are there. So that's one way that I think there's a power in leveraging those models that are openly available.
Thank
Sounds
you.
like my
you.
time's up.
Could you stop that? I'm actually tracking time. We are well in time. I noticed that when we started, it started with 35 instead of 55. I'm not going to take that long, but I think we certainly do have at least 10 minutes. Yeah. So you have 2 minutes, though. So Wendy, as a pioneering computer scientist, as the AI revolution is unfolding, how do you address the digital divide that exists even within the global south? Your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I don't, I'm going to say I don't understand the question. Because you said as a computer science, explain, ask me again, in a different way.
Yeah, you've done pioneering.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
What's the digital, computer science and the digital divide? What's
Okay, let me rephrase that. As a leader, as a thought leader.
right?
Okay. So,
What?
there is a divide right now. I mean, there are various challenges which are unique, and there is a digital divide. Some of them are more enabled even within Global South. So what are your views on bridging that divide?
I still don't understand the question, Hannah. I'm sorry, because what are you talking about? You're saying every country has problems where
Correct.
people, some
Yeah.
people
So
understand
any
digital,
any
and some
commonality
people
that
don't.
you see, any
Isn't that
commonality
true?
that you
It's
see?
not just a Global South thing, is it? We have people, I mean, we have a huge problem, in Europe, certainly in the UK, about people who have the world, most of the people in the world do not understand AI, right? At all. Is that the digital divide you're talking about? What are you
Sure,
talking about?
that's one of the things that,
I don't
but
know.
deployment of AI really becomes a challenge right now. Okay, so your thoughts on that? I mean, collaboration is one example of that. Okay.
No, it does. If so, I don't get. Does anyone want to answer this question? 'Cause I
Anybody
just
else
don't get
would
it,
like to
because-
help out here with this question? Anyway,
Well, let me just say, right, the key thing for me is that there's currently a huge con trick going on, right? We are being conned. I'm going to talk about this in my keynote tomorrow by the big tech companies, right? We're all being conned. They're saying, oh, sorry. Actually, I'll tell you, Google's my favourite, right?
There are humans in there.
Google's my favourite. But there's this huge thing about, we're going to reach AGI by the end of the year, right? That's what Dario said at Davos. We're going to reach AGI by the end of the year. Demis slowed him down a bit, okay? And said 5 to 10 years. What does AGI mean? You know, it's a meaningless term. And this, and the world out there thinks AI is going to take their job and thinks that we're all going to be overrun by AI. And it gets very scary because people don't understand. So the key to this, and it's true for politicians and the media, as well as your average person in the street or the farm or wherever, is education, education, education. You've absolutely got to help people understand what it is we're dealing with here so that they can, I mean, lobbies maybe not the right word, local politicians or their local schools or their local universities or...
no, we'll stop.
To help people understand what this technology is and what it might do to their lives, how it might change their careers or their careers their children might aspire to, what do teachers make of it. And these people are not going to ever understand how this technology really works in terms of the mathematics behind it and that sort of detail. So we have to explain to people when this whole, I mean, the taxi driver taking me to Heathrow Airport yesterday said, how do I tell the difference between a deep fake and I don't know what's truth anymore. And we're really coming in, you know, we've got AI slop everywhere. Can I stop?
Okay.
I'll just stop.
Thank you. So education is one of the ways of, along with collaboration, educating people on AI. And it's, again, we're talking
How's
about multi-stakeholder
help?
collaboration. Getting everybody's views while deploying AI solutions. Okay, we do have time for a couple of questions from the audience. Go ahead. Microphone, or I can give my microphone.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful panel. I had a simple question on evaluation because a lot of you brought it up. How would you structure that evaluation? Should it be different in different contexts? Should it be different in different countries? What baseline would we follow across the world? And I ask this mainly because I'm very interested in participatory approaches to building, deployment, and evaluation, where you actually bring the lived experience of the end beneficiaries into the equation. So how would you structure evaluation and monitoring? This could be for Safia or anyone else on the panel. Thank you.
Can I just ask, what are you evaluating?
The impact of the technology.
The impact of the technology? Right.
So, just to clarify, you mean impact evaluation and not AI evaluation?
Yes, that's why I wanted to ask.
Understood. Yeah, no, because that does make quite a big difference. I mean, I think from a very impact measurement perspective, it would be very difficult given how much AI is infused to find it counterfactual. So I think that is actually quite a big question that even as an impact measurement specialist, I have as well. And just like you have in many evaluations, impact evaluations, I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all approach. I think it really depends on what is the causal relationship you're trying to understand, right? I think already today we do see a lot of evaluations happening at the expert level, right? Is the output exactly what we want? But I think if you want to ask the social question, you have to first decide on what parameters, and I don't think you can have a mega evaluation because that's going to give you a lot of confounding answers, right? So I think we are not at a place where there is a baseline framework, and I'm also not sure that that is the future that we should be pursuing, because each technology will have its nuance, and if we don't, evaluate impact in the way that picks on those nuances, then we're actually, risking perhaps not understanding what true impact that intervention or that technology would have. Anyone else wants to add?
Yeah, I think one big thing is going to be not conflating the two. No, from the perspective on the other side as well, that when we do have big claims of how the AI now, the way we've evaluated AI is going to now change all of these sectors and everything, because now we're getting whatever humanities last exam and now saying that means on the other side, the tide will lift all boats and everybody's going to benefit in the same way. These are not the same kind of thing. And the point is, on one side, making those big claims because of maybe the ecosystem in terms of where money flows or resources are going to flow, it does have impact in terms of, and it does hurt. Because in some places then people then say, we are not going to make the education investments because it's fine, somebody else is taking care of this. But actually that's not the reality on the social side. But then now, nobody is now going to invest in solving some of these things. So it is a very good question in terms of, let's not conflate the two, but sometimes it looks like in public that, it's the same thing, and it's not.
We have time for one more question.
Thank you for the panel. Wonderful comments. Mine, one is a reflection around, I think, impact. If you think about it from medical diagnostics, for example, like simple things like radiology, a simple small model that could fit on a cell phone that a nurse could use. If the output is to catch more, infections, maybe it would be much faster. But then if the outcome you're looking for is people getting the help they need once they figure it out, that's another dimension to it. But my question, to anybody on the panel is for our future generation. So I'm a professor and I teach undergraduates, and I feel like a lot of students are not ready or are not evolving as the world is evolving really quickly. And so in terms of preparation, like what kind of, from your leadership perspective, what do you see is the shift in terms of being ready for the unknown, right? If you think about computer science students graduating right now. They're graduating in the millions. I'm making that up in the US, for example. So the question is, what does it look like for an undergraduate or a graduate student who's finishing right now in the current environment?
No jobs. Don't you think it's ironic that the industry that's creating all this is the one that's destroying jobs for programmers? But actually, I say that quite glibly because I don't think that is the case. We've already seen, and I think it's true in the US, a fall in the numbers of people applying for computer science because the rhetoric is we don't need programmers in the future. Actually, it's always when I'm talking.
It's a love alert.
But
We will need, because at the moment, I mean, this is another bit of the con, which is that it's not AI that's doing this. People do this with AI. At the moment, and I don't know for how long, but at the moment, AI doesn't decide what it's going to do, what programs it's going to build. I mean, that could come in the future, but it's not here now. And so we are going to need these types, but the rhetoric that gets out there very quickly is, no, we don't need any programmers. Okay, sorry, I'll shut up. Let someone else say something.
I'll add to your points. I think what's really important, actually, you're training undergraduates is teaching them as early as possible to question everything. And that means that you need to, as a computer scientist or any field that you're in, you need to separate yourself from your work. So, maybe you're going through the PhD, I was in robotics, you love your robot, it's capturing elements about the world. You really have to separate yourself from your work and think about what are the 1,000 ways this can go wrong. The interesting thing about being in robotics is that I had to think about safety first because for all sorts of reasons. So that's kind of baked into the set of algorithms that you learn first. But in general, I think and it's not just for undergrad, also your children, in the similar way you talked about deepfakes. Question everything. Separate yourself from the tools and techniques that you build and start to think about what are the ramifications, positive, negative, what could be some downstream impacts. And don't do it by yourself, do it collaboratively with different people.
Thank you very much for bringing in students. I think they are going to be here for some time at least, so you can connect with them later unless they are feeling, or everybody's feeling very, very hungry. But what happened towards the end is that students and fresh graduates were brought in as one big community, as a stakeholder in this. But I would like to thank all panelists for giving their views on the need for collaboration for responsible AI. Thank you very much. You want to?
It doesn't have my name, it's called speaker.
It's only No, she wanted to send we're taking it. So, Ravi? I couldn't. I was like, oh, I actually have a pen, but I'm not going to use it. Ask for the Thank you. We have a token of appreciation, so I would